Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Authors Fit. My name is Munira Hussein. Today, I will be speaking to Joanna Cockerline. Joanna is a very good friend of mine and a co author. She is a Canadian Broadcasting Corporation Literary Awards prize winner and is the author of the novel Still, which was longlisted for the Gila Prize, Canada's most prestigious literary award, and shortlisted for the Rakuten Kobo Prize. Still is set in the unhoused and sex work communities of Kelowna, Canada. Joanna is also co author of the short story collection Sing Our Sisters alongside myself, Rehema Zuberi, Ella, Helena, and Jackie. She lives in Kelowna, BC, Canada, where she teaches literature and creative writing at the University of British Columbia, Okanagan. Hi. Hi, Joanna. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I am good, thank you. It's so good to see you. It's been so long. Yeah. I'm so excited that you could join me today. Thank you so much for waking up early and making the time to sit with me.
Oh, absolutely. My pleasure. It's so great to
Yeah.
see you.
Thank you. Good to see you too. We will talk a little bit about writing in general, and then Still, and the reflections and the themes within Still, the book, and maybe a little bit about the sequel. So I will dive right in with the question, which is, I mean, you've been writing for a while now, but you've also been teaching creative writing, and I'm curious to know what has teaching creative writing taught you about writing?
It's taught me a lot because I think you have to put yourself in your students' shoes and really um, think about the whole process. So,
Yeah.
everything from idea generation to really making an impression on your readers. And when you're voicing that out loud to people, you of course get that really solidified within your own head. And
Yeah.
yeah,
It's easier to reflect on it when you talk about it every day, more or less, in a classroom setting. Maybe it's easier to. Do you get fatigue of ideas or the teaching, or is it always an inspirational experience?
I think it's always inspirational and it's great to see the students' reactions as well. Um, to see what ignites them and to hear what they're talking about, what they want to write about, and that can always generate more ideas too.
Hmm. Yeah. And I think that you get new students every season is just keeps it fresh even for you because they're always bringing new ideas to the table and whatnot.
Exactly, exactly.
You have had a bit of an experience with Kenya's literary scene. We've co-authored Seeing Our Sisters, which was an incredible experience. How does the Kenya's literary scene compare to the Canadian? Maybe in your experience, because I understand it's a very broad place to just we narrow it down to your experience of how Kenya's literary scene and the Canadian scene compare.
I think both are really vibrant. What I love about Kenyan's literary scene is there's such a do it yourself culture where people have a story to tell and they go tell it. And the self publishing industry is really alive and well there. Um, Small presses are really alive and well there. And it's great to see that there's such an egalitarian approach and a lot of voices are getting out there and the community in Kenya is so excited about literature. I absolutely love Kenyan audiences and Kenyan readers. um, it's been such a pleasure and just so exciting having my book reach Kenya now, and um, certainly our launch for Seeing Our Sisters was huge. We had over 100 people. It turned into a dance party. It was just absolutely a delightful once in a lifetime experience to have that launch alongside you and the other wonderful women. And I just think the scene in Kenya is so lively and so open to a wide variety of voices. I would say the scene in Canada is really welcoming of authors and really exciting, but I wouldn't say that there's the same vibrancy that Kenya has. So I just adore the Kenyan writing scene.
Thank you. It's been, I think there's been an awakening of sorts to writing now, and a lot of people are open to expressing themselves either through fiction or nonfiction and poetry. I think we have a book launch every month, if not every other weekend. It's so beautiful to see all the stories that are coming out, and not just from Nairobi, but from all over the country at this point. What do you think makes it challenging, maybe for Canadian writers to not publish as easily? I know there's the process of agents and getting a publishing house, but there's also the Amazon avenues. I guess it's not as lucrative, especially because it needs intense marketing. So, what do you think some of the challenges are?
I think there's just less of a buzz about books. I think there's it's certainly exciting to publish here, but it's a little bit harder with getting an agent, with getting a publishing house. So there's a lot more gatekeeping. There's a less egalitarian approach than in Kenya. And I feel like that limits the excitement because it makes it feel like not everyone can participate. Whereas in Kenya, I feel like it's a really wide circle and that generates a lot of excitement. And I think that the Canadian publishing scene and Canadian literary scene has a lot to learn from Kenya.
Yeah. That's yeah. I think we do have a bit of freedom, considering you can easily get an ISBN number, copyright. So all of the process is really online, and you don't even have to go into any office for those necessary documents for the publication. Now on to Still. I know I started reading Still as a manuscript way before she became the wonderful book that she is, and it was such an honor and such an incredible experience to see it become the book that it is. And the inspiration is the unhoused communities on the streets of Kelowna. And, could tell us a little bit about the street communities and your outreach program that has tried the best it can to help in ways that you can help.
Definitely. Still was originally inspired by my outreach volunteer work. There's a sizable community of people living on the street in Kelowna, and there was an organization that set out to give them basic supplies such as toothbrushes and toothpaste and food and water, warm clothing in the winter. And alongside giving out supplies, we were there as an emotional support and let people know about any resources that were available in the community. And it became a way of really bonding with people, really being there for people when sometimes it felt like no one else was. Certainly the bonds between people in the street community can be quite strong, and that was the basis of the inspiration for Still. was seeing that sense of solidarity, seeing those friendships, seeing that community of people that even though they may not have a lot of material things, they had each other, they had networks of support, they had chosen families. And it was really incredible to see those relationships, and that sense of solidarity and friendship really ignited the idea behind Still. I've always been a writer, but this took my writing in a new direction, and it's been really exciting to develop. It was really exciting to develop Still and to talk to people on the street as I was doing it. I had people say, "Put this in," and I had one woman who said, "Make me a star." So one of the characters is based on her, and yeah, it's been really wonderful now that the book is out to see it get widespread public attention, but also it's a book that circulates in the unhoused community, and people are reading it and seeing their lives reflected, and that's made it really special.
Yeah, it's an amazing story. It does a lot to rehumanize the communities on the streets and also just give us a perception of, what communities that are going on that we might not see from outside. So I wonder what has that experience maybe revealed to you about some of the misconceptions that people that do not work with this, with the or are not as close to the street families might have. Some of the misconceptions or things that we might not know.
Yeah, in Canada, there's a lot of public perception that the people on the street are, um, have failed at life, that a lot of them are addicted to drugs or alcohol, that they're a blight on society. Whereas when you get to know people, they're just people, and everyone has their own stories, their own hopes, their own dreams, their own histories, and their own visions for the future. So it's really important to get past the stereotypes and to really meet people where they're at and see people as people. And that's been something that I feel like the novel opens readers' eyes a bit about who is out there and their stories.
Yeah. I think it does a wonderful job of letting us into, the lives of the people. And you get to see even a lot of yourself in there, and you wouldn't expect that because the assumption is that you did something right, and that then you think maybe they did something wrong or they chose the lives that they chose. And a lot of it is circumstances, and you might not know the circumstances. And sometimes it feels like there is another option, but sometimes that's the only place they can live for a while until they can, be back on their feet and figure out where to move forward to after. And I think that's where the outreach programs come in to be able to help when they're ready, or when they feel like they're ready to charter a new path, more or less. So you're doing incredible work. I always love to see when you make the posts, and I'm very proud of you for that. Really amazing. There's also the mention of decriminalizing sex work, and you do mention maybe in the book sort of portray the advantages of that, but we can just reiterate it here and mention why it is important for them to have a right to be protected. They do have a right to be protected, but just put it on paper and in policy.
Yes, exactly. In Canada, there's a real gray area around sex work where it's sort of legal, but not really. And a lot of just gets ignored. But the end result is that there's a lot of underground sex work. There's a lot of um, ways that people are put in danger or dangerous situations, that if it were just legal and a little more out in the open, um, just treating sex work as work, then it could be a lot safer for the people in that work. And the characters certainly embody that and feel that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think any person that is offering any service, like any other, um, because this is a service people come to seek, and you see the workers reflecting on what services they offer, and you know, people take advantage of that, and the fact that there's no law against um harming, or like little Zoe's disappearance it lingers throughout the book, because you're not sure if she's hurt or if she was kidnapped, or one of the clients seeking services hurt her, and the police are not doing as much as you would expect. You see, it's the community that is trying to push to find her. And I did you always think there would be a sequel to it? So hopefully we find out what happened to her. I'm very curious to know. I actually wanted to text you and ask, so do we find her? But I was like, no, let's just leave it. Even leaving it hanging like that it gives you some sense of hope that she's okay or will come back. But did you mean to write a sequel?
It it just kind of inspired itself. In the story of Still, we have Kayla, who has fled across the country, fleeing a difficult situation, and finds herself on the streets. And that's when she meets little Zoe, who's already a sex worker, and kind of shows Kayla the ropes of the streets. And when little Zoe goes missing, we're really not sure where she is, and neither is Kayla, and neither is the street community. So the search for little Zoe, that is a huge part of the book, um, was something that I wanted to keep realistic. I wanted um, to really embody the sense of risk and the sense of uncertainty, and that we don't know what happens when someone goes missing, and that there are a lot of possibilities. So naturally that did kind of lead to a sequel, because at book clubs and events, a lot of readers have said, what happened to little Zoe? Because and I wanted to leave that open and a bit of a mystery, because just because that's often the case with a missing persons case. So the sequel, we do get an idea of what happened. It's again not definitive. It's an idea of what likely happened, but we see the continuance. So little Zoe still has a presence in the sequel, and I don't want to give too much away,
Yeah.
but yes, Kayla and little Zoe in ways are back.
Yes, I love that you string us along very nicely, because, just zoom in and out of the disappearance so that it does not consume the rest of the characters. So you still get to see them live their life, but while also, especially Kayla, doing what she can to try and find, considering she has a more or less criminal history, so she cannot be so out there with the search, because she's also in hiding. But she still tries in whatever ways she can, and even gets into danger for it sometimes, but she keeps looking. So that sense of community, I think, is what really holds the book together, because they are looking out for each other. More, they are considered criminals in the larger sense, because they are running away, some of them, not all of them. But then you also get to see that when it comes down to it, they did what they had to do to get out of a difficult situation. So it makes you wonder if they're really criminals, or if it's the system that is making them criminals for not defending them against an injustice. There's also this assumption in writing. It's not an assumption, rather, but there's the belief sort of. Some writers say to write what you know, others say to write what you don't know. So where do we stand on that? Or how important are our experiences in the stories we write, or our imagination? I don't suppose that experiences in any way subvert imagination, but just
I think you have to have a familiarity with what you know, but a lot of that familiarity can be done through research or imagination or talking to others. Certainly, I put a lot of myself in the character of Kayla emotionally. Her situation was different than mine, but I feel like by talking to people who have lived those realities and also doing research, I feel like that was other ways to get the stories, and certainly just the imagination of putting yourself in somebody else's shoes. So I would say it's definitely a combination in my case,
Yeah.
and I think that's a very healthy combination to have
Yeah.
as you write.
yeah, true. I think it helps create a more realistic or a more relatable character and a more relatable plot for readers in certain circumstances. Like sometimes the imagination can. I don't think you can have a writing just out of experience without the imagination of it, because unless it's a memoir or an autobiography, then there's a lot of fiction that goes into even the factual experiences that we write. So, what are some of the tricks that you use to maybe help your students get imaginative or get creating to bring their creative mind to the forefront and maybe tell the stories well enough?
Giving them and giving yourself freedom to explore, to not always have a plan that you're locked into, to be open to what you imagine, what you encounter, get to know your characters and see where your characters take you. Just yesterday, I was working on the sequel and I ended up writing a chapter that I didn't know would happen at all because the characters just took the story in their own direction. And I'm like, okay, here we go. Let's see where this journey takes us. And I think that's something that I would encourage writers to do, is to, even if you're starting with a plan, always feel free to deviate from it and to really go with where your imagination takes you, and
Yeah.
to not close any doors, to not be afraid of giving yourself that freedom, and also not putting the pressure on yourself that the first draft that you write has to be any good. It can be an exploration and maybe it went nowhere, or maybe you want to rewrite the whole thing, and just giving yourself that break, giving yourself that freedom, that you can write without pressure. Because if you
Yeah.
have pressure to write, then you think, oh, I have to make it good the first time and this has to work, and then you just get stressed out. Whereas if you say, I'm just going to try a thing, let's see where it goes, I can edit later, I can rewrite later, I can
Mhm.
tinker, then that can set your mind free a little bit more.
Yes, that's right. Um, I, are there any tricks you use to keep yourself writing, especially when you're stuck? There's the assumption that if you're stuck writing a story, then it's because you don't know the story well. I don't know if that's always true, because sometimes I do feel like I get a sense of the story, I just don't have the words to tell it, which is strange because it's the story is there in my mind, but when it comes to translating it onto paper, then it becomes challenging. So then creates this block, although the creative mind continues to create. So, what are some of the tricks or techniques that have kept you writing for as long as you have and up to finishing a whole book? I've been working on my manuscript for like 7 years now, and it's still nowhere near done.
Always a long journey, and I think, um that's something to really keep in mind in your creative process, is to really to see it as a journey, to see it as something that is going to take a long time to do well, and to not beat yourself up if you have a day where you set out to write and you just don't do anything good. Just call it a day and realize that
Yeah.
you'll have another day. And if you're wanting to continue, I would say one of my pieces of advice is don't let the blank page or the blank screen stare you down. Just get something down and see where it takes you. It might be a road you want to follow, it might not. But sometimes by doing what you don't want to do, you realize what you do want to do. And another inspiration that I think I always recommend to people who want to write is to read a lot of quality fiction, to really expose yourself to a wide variety of voices, a wide variety of narratives, and really um, see what other authors are doing, how they're getting into their characters, how they're getting into their scenes, how they're telling their stories. And that can be inspiration, not to regurgitate what another author has done or to steal their ideas, nothing like that, but to see how they're telling a story and how you might be able to tell your own.
It also helps sometimes for me to work on different things at different times. So if the novel is not working, I do a short story. If the short story is stuck, there's always a poem to write. So it sort of helps to oscillate between all the things I do, because I think I'm lucky to write everything, because there's some people who only write novels and others only write short stories. But I think I've been working with all the forms for a little while now. It sort of helps to just keep something running at any one point so that I'm not stuck for a very long time, which is detrimental sometimes because you overlook one, especially the novel, especially the novel. And yeah, but it does help to just work on different things at different times. When you're stuck on one, I think. Um, so you've been working with the street communities for a while now, and what are some of the um, if anyone wants to help or come on board or wants to start doing something similar, what are some of the ways that they can start reaching out, or where do they start to be of service in whatever ways they can be?
Yeah, that's a great question, because the organization that I used to volunteer with for 8 years ceased its operations due to leadership problems. So my outreach partner and I actually decided to start our own grassroots organization. So we went to the community and asked for donations of used clothing, of um, granola bars, of protein bars, of candy. Candy can be a good way to get to know people, brighten people's days. And we just took the initiative into our own hands because that other organization had stopped and that had left the street community without a really vital link and a way to get supplies. So I think really empowering yourself to see a need, to get to know the community that you want to service, to get to know their needs, to really talk to them, to see what ways you can be helpful without just assuming you know the way, to really listen to them, and to just put yourself out there and be responsive to a community's needs, I think, and to realize you can do it. Even if you don't have a lot of money behind you, there are still ways to get creative and to help in those ways.
I think it's really important, the point on not assuming that you know what people need or what they need or what you think they need. It's good to ask, because there's different experiences they have had. It could be a psychologist offering mental health services, like Wanjiru does with the being a nurse and whatnot, offering medical supplies and whatnot, whatever she can spare. So it's important, I think, to remember to ask or to find out in details what it is that is needed and how you can offer that without also the condensation or the the feeling that you're superior in any way, and these are people who need saving. Some of them, eventually people will save themselves if they need saving, but that mentality might not work. You see, there's so much that's going on in the world at any one point. There are wars, there are kids that are dying, and sometimes when I'm sitting at my desk to write, I wonder, how is this relevant, or how is this important to a world that is constantly burning up? How is fiction important and relevant to a world that seems to need radical, immediate changes? How do we stay creating through the fires?
I think the all of the upheaval and issues in our world can ultimately inspire us to connect, to write, to cultivate empathy, because that's what fiction does. Is it puts you in other people's shoes, it puts you in other people's minds, and that's what we need to cultivate community, to be there for one another, to understand what's going on in other people's minds in other parts of the world. We need to have that empathy and that sense of connection, and I feel like fiction can really put you there and develop those insights and make you feel for someone who isn't in your situation. So I think fiction can seem like, oh, that doesn't have to do with the real world, but it very much has to do with the real world. And it's perhaps exactly what we need in times of struggle. There's a great Toni Morrison quote, and I can't remember it offhand, but it's basically like, when times are tough, that's when writers get to work. And that's just a paraphrase of what's actually a much better quote when Toni Morrison says it. But I think that's a really important way to see fiction, is that is a wake-up call to the world, and that's what good fiction can be.
True, because I think we also use it as an escape. Reading other, well, it's not much of an escape, especially when you're reading fiction that reflects, and fiction always reflects society. So whenever it does give you a sense of escape, but also information. Sometimes that society has always been like this. There's only so much you can do, and that sometimes is depressing, but other times it's all the hope you need and can get at hand, especially in these times. Uh, so that you have written short stories and then long form novels too. How do they compare, and how do you are the processes the same for your writing them, and how do you go about curating one or the other?
I would say short stories for me are a moment in time typically, and you have to get to know your characters and your situation really immediately. So I love that sense of urgency. I have a small space in which to write. What am I going to deem most important? How am I going to tell this story in a way that grabs the reader and takes them on a significant journey in a short way? Whereas a novel gives you a chance to really develop a larger world, to develop a sense of history, to have more backstories, and to really get to know your characters and situations over time. And I think that's reflected in the writing process, because when I write a short story, sometimes I just sit down and write it. And then, of course, you go back and edit it and all of that. Whereas a novel is a much more ongoing, lengthy process. And it kind of grows as you do and as the manuscript does.
What are some of the beliefs that maybe you held when you started writing and that felt meaningful and important then, but now you feel like they're not as serving to your writing, that you're implementing more of?
That's a great question. I think my main lesson to myself has been to be open to the process and be open to evolution, to be open to evolution of the stories, evolution of the characters, where the story takes you, to have a plan, but feel free to deviate from the plan and to trust yourself. Sometimes something will come up in a character or a story and you don't know why it's taking you there, but you feel compelled to go there. And I feel like as I've become a more experienced writer, I trust that instinct. And I say, okay, there's something there. I don't know what it is yet, but I'm going to explore it. And I think one thing that I've really developed in my writing practice is that openness to exploration.
That's amazing. I think it does also help you not confine yourself to what you think the story should be. And so then you write the story that needs to be written as opposed to the story you think you should write. Yeah. So you can find a copy of Steel at Nuria Bookstore anytime. And it's a book I would encourage us all to read. Um, Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Authors Fit. I have been talking to Joanna, a creative writer, short story and fiction. Her book Still is available at Nuria Bookstore, and we have also co-authored a short story collection, Seeing Our Sisters, which is also available at Nuria Bookstore. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Authors Fit. I have been talking to Joanna Cockerline. I hope you enjoyed the conversation and leave us feedback.